Hello. So this morning my attention is being brought to the ongoing unrest over a film that's said to be anti-Islamic, said to be very crude in nature, and I want to focus on some of the issues surrounding this. This film supposedly was made somewhere in the US. Its exact origins aren't very certain. It was posted on YouTube. I haven't seen the film myself. I'm not sure if that's been taken down or not, but I haven't been able to see it to judge for myself. But apparently it's quite crude in its nature. It depicts the Prophet Muhammad as homosexual. It depicts him as not that being a homosexual actually would be morally wrong in my opinion, but that's it depicts him as being responsible for atrocities. It depicts him as well, basically the impression I get is the film is very... I haven't seen the film itself, so I don't want to comment in too much detail about what the film entails, but from what I gather it was tasteless. But my main issue and my main condemnation is on the absolutely unjustified Islamist violence that we've been seeing, particularly the embassy attacks in Benghazi a few days ago, with four Americans killed. Now, any mentality that murders people over an offensive film is a very dangerous mentality that needs to be challenged. And there's been protests across the Middle East. The main protests have been in Libya, Egypt, and I believe today Yemen. But I wouldn't be surprised if they spread. I've read that the new Prime Minister of Libya, Mustafa Abu Shakur, has told the BBC he doesn't want the consulate attacks to damage relations with the US. That's good. And I also give him credit for pointing out that the US government itself is not responsible for the making of this film. The way the American system is, freedom of speech is enshrined freedom of expression. So the American government cannot regulate what people say. There is laws about hate speech and so on, but it wasn't the US government that made this film. So first of all, that's what the protesters should learn. It was not the US government that was responsible. So by attacking American embassies, they're targeting the wrong people. Now, a lot of the protesters have said they want peaceful protests, but the scenes that have been shown have been not very peaceful. There's been violent clashes, and security forces have had to protect the various US embassies with good cause. I mean, if the scenes in Cairo replicate those in Benghazi, then lives will be at risk, and likewise in Yemen and other parts of the Middle East. Now, I think this once again shows the capabilities of political Islamism for violence, and they will find any excuse for violence. Islam is unique in this sort of response to offence. Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, and just about every other religion will have plenty of cause for offence a lot of the time. But this sort of violent reaction is unique within Islam. You rarely see this with any other religion, this sort of reaction. No, I'm not saying every Muslim will react like that, but the reaction is unique within Islam. You get fundamentalists in every religion, but the widespread scale of Islamism is, I think, unique. And we see this. We've seen this so many times. You cannot use a film, no matter how offensive it is, and I'm not condoning the film, I think it was reckless and very irresponsible. I won't comment too much about the details of the film, I haven't seen it, so I won't critique the details. From what I gather, it was tasteless. I will say it was very irresponsible. It's putting American lives at risk by making such a film. So the filmmakers are incredibly selfish in that regard. But anyone who thinks you can equate offence at a film with cold-bloodedly murdering 4 human beings and violently threatening others needs their head examined. There is absolutely no comparison. Now, in the 1970s there was a comedy called The Life of Brian, which many Christians found offensive, but you did not have that reaction. You did not have violent threats made towards the filmmakers. And that really did mock Jesus Christ. It was a satire, and many Christians could well have found that offensive. Now, I'm well aware that there's been many Muslims have condemned the violence, so I'm not suggesting that every Muslim is reacting like this, not for a second. But we do see this reaction every time there's an alleged insult towards Islam. Now, if these people had any sense, they would just ignore the film. They would rise above it. All you're doing is making the filmmakers famous. You're giving them the attention they probably want, and they probably wanted this sort of attention. Now, I don't agree with Hillary Clinton. She has come out very strongly in condemning the film, and she seems to be emphasising condemnation of the film as the main message here. What she should be doing is foremostly condemning the violence, and then of course saying the film is reckless and so on. But she seems to be focusing on the film, and I've always considered Hillary Clinton a good diplomat, but I think she's wrong here. There's absolutely no justification whatsoever for using violence to express anger at perceived insults towards religion. And if you think it's justified to kill 4 people over a film, then you really need your head examined. I don't condone the film. I think it was reckless, and the filmmakers are incredibly irresponsible. But these so-called peaceful protests, so far they have not come across as very peaceful, and we've already had 4 people killed. I wouldn't be surprised if there's serious threats to come. And this is predictable, really, because whenever Islam is criticised in any way, I don't think this was particularly legitimate criticism. I think it was a deliberate attempt to stir things up. But even when we see reasonable criticism of Islam, points that are well argued, points that are put across in a responsible way, we still see a violent reaction. And now the local authorities in these countries, Yemen, Egypt and Libya, to be fair, they have made some attempts to calm down the protesters and to diffuse the situation. But the fact is there's still a lot of protesters who have violently taken to the streets. They say it's peaceful, but I haven't seen much peace in hurling rocks and grenades at police and trying to barge their way into embassies. That's not peaceful. Whatever way you gloss it over, that's not peaceful. And I think Islam is once again coming across in a bad light. If you really insist on pushing the claim that Islam is a religion of peace and tolerance, how do you counter that claim with these sort of protests? And we can't say this is a handful of people protesting. There's thousands and thousands of people protesting. Sure, not all of them are going to kill people, but it definitely shows a deeply intolerant side to Islam. It's an ultra-sensitive religion, that's for sure. And the protests aren't peaceful, so that's pretty obvious. I hope the situation doesn't escalate much further, but this isn't the first time it's happened. We remember the cartoons over the Prophet Muhammad that were made in a Danish newspaper, the furore that caused. We remember the Pope's badly worded comments. And remember the Dutch film Fitna. There's a long line of provocative films, provocative statements that could well have been irresponsible, but ultimately the greater evil there was the barbaric violence that followed. And we're seeing it once again. If these protesters have any sense, they'll rise above it. They'll prove that Islam is a religion of peace. And sure, they can condemn the film. I don't blame them for that. They have a right to condemn the film, and they have a right to peacefully protest, but they aren't peacefully protesting. These are violent protests. And once again, it shows the ugly face of Islamism. And what these people need to understand is that in the United States of America and in other Western countries, freedom of expression is considered a human right. That means that includes the freedom to be offensive. Now, American politicians have condemned the film. I condemn the film for being reckless. But I do not believe it should be illegal to be critical of a religion, even if that criticism is crude in nature. It's different if they're making violent threats against Muslims. That would be a different matter. But mocking, ridiculing and vilifying a historic figure is a valid form of free expression. You can take on the accuracies of it, but that is a valid form of free expression. Muhammad was a historic figure. Therefore, he should be open to critique, to scrutiny. And I'm not saying that sort of scrutiny in the film. I'm not agreeing with that scrutiny because I haven't seen the film. But Muhammad was a man, and he should be open to the same sort of scrutiny as any other historic figure. The fact that he was a founder of a religion does not make him exempt from scrutiny or biographical debate. No, it doesn't. And frankly, a lot of these Islamists who are finding this excuse, or using this as an excuse to go on a violent rampage, basically they're highlighting the general view, the widespread view that Islam as a religion is still stuck in the Middle Ages. And if you're a moderate Muslim and disagree with that, I would say just look at what is happening. You know, there will be many Muslims will condemn the violence, but at the same time many Muslims will completely condone the violence. We can't say this is a minority of people. We can't say it's just a handful of people. It's thousands and thousands of people are reacting this way. So there are real issues here, and this certainly won't be the last time this happens. So in conclusion, my views on the situation are the film was reckless, but there's absolutely zero justification whatsoever for these violent protests. Protests are legitimate, violent protests are not. And as for the cold-blooded murder of those 4 Americans in the embassy, well, I hope the perpetrators are caught and brought to justice. The Libyans have assured the US they will do that. And I just hope that happens because, you know, Islamism really is quite a powerful force, and its propaganda campaigns are also very powerful. A lot of the people they reach out to are not well educated. They can't see other opinions, and they, I think, are brainwashed by radical clerics after Friday prayers. These aren't peaceful protests. That's been pretty obvious from the scenes on various news agencies around the world. And I hope the situation decreases. I think the filmmakers should retract the film, not because I think that criticism of Islam isn't valid, I think it is, but on the grounds that they are putting American lives at risk. They should retract the film for that reason. And yeah, I would say to the protesters, you have no moral high ground whatsoever. The film may have been tasteless, but what you're doing is it's absolutely pathetic, and you are just painting Islam, the religion you claim is about peace and tolerance, to be violent and intolerant and very, very petty, ultra sensitive, an ultra sensitive religion. And if you really think offence is on par with human lives, then that's a very sick mindset, quite frankly. Okay, let me know your thoughts. Thank you.